call the meeting to order. Please rise while Supervisor Leggett leads us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond? Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Yep.
Mr. Loeb?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Stroud? Mr. Weil?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrity? Chairman Conover?
Here. We do have a quorum. At this point, I'll declare public hearing open on the proposed Warren County Local Law Number 2 of 2019, a local law imposing an additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County, and request that the clerk read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York, is considering the adoption of proposed local law number 2 of the year 2019, entitled a local law imposing an additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on January 18, 2019, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors on January 31, 2019, at 9:30 a.m. at the Supervisors' Rooms in the Warren County Municipal Center, Route 9, Queensbury, New York, at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed local law number 2 for the year 2019 will be heard concerning same. A copy of said local law is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board regarding this local law? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
My name is Nathan Dunn. I live at 40 Sanford Street in Glens Falls, and I am the acting chair of the Libertarian Party here in Warren County. So if you know anything about libertarians, we tend to say that taxation is theft. I'm a little more nuanced. I say that taxation is extortion, to which we tend to acquiesce. But neither of those things are super helpful if I came here and just said that. So I've been working on a rubric that I'd like to use for evaluating taxes that are proposed. So I've got 5 questions and a couple sub-questions. Number 1, the most important thing is what is the tax being used for? And in this case, it's just going into the general fund, which I think is the worst answer possible because there's no specific purpose for that tax. Under that, what is it used for? There are sub-questions. Is the thing that we're trying to do the proper role of government, and will the tax be effective? And we can't answer those questions if it's just going to the general fund. Number 2, who's paying the tax? In this case, it's mortgage lenders. Number 3, how much is the levy? And it's 0.25% of the amount of the mortgage, and historically in Warren County, it's less than $1 million annually. What is that amount based on? Well, it seems like that amount in this case is based on what the mortgage lenders are willing to pay. So then that kind of leads into number 4, how voluntary is the tax? So for instance, are there ways to opt out of that tax, like a sales tax? If you don't like what the county's doing or you don't like the amount, you can always shop in another county. So that's a little bit more voluntary than like a property tax where you live here, you pay your property tax. So in this case, mortgage lenders seem to have it built into their cost of doing business. It has been suggested that they pass that cost on to borrowers, which might be true, but I have no evidence one way or the other that somebody's mortgage might actually be higher or lower, whether that tax is in place. Number 5 is, are there other practical ways to raise the money? It has been suggested that this tax lowers the overall property tax levy in the county, but the loss of revenue was factored into the 2019 budget, from my understanding, and while the tax levy increased 2.5%, that was less than 2.7% tax cap that's allowed by state law, and the 2019 budget also included increased spending, and I personally don't believe that it would have been significantly different if this tax was taken into account, if we had this tax. So overall, it feels like a slightly shady way of just grabbing cash from people who are willing to give it, extra several $100,000 a year, and mortgage lenders have just, like I said, resign themselves as the cost of doing business, and so they'll just pay it. So hey, why wouldn't we take that? So even though it's a low coercion tax, they are generally willing to pay it. There's no clear purpose to it, so I do oppose this tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? There being no one else, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Merlino.
Yeah, just a word. This is not a new tax. I was asked that the other day. It's a tax that we've had on for 6 years at least, and it's just being rolled over because it has to be renewed every 2 years. So it's not a new tax. It's been there for at least 6 years.
We should do the reading of this. Anyone else wishing to comment? Ms. Bramer.
Well, I would like to, but could I ask for the county clerk to come and address some of those points if she would?
Absolutely, without objection.
No, I don't object. I'll do the best I can.
Sure. I know you will.
One of the things that our speaker noted was that it was paid by the lender. Actually, the mortgage tax is set up by the state of New York. 1/4 lender, the balance is with the borrower. So perhaps that's a note of clarification. I think there was a comment also regarding, making that estimate for the year and basing the entire year. My recollection from the budget process was that we actually looked at the first quarter of the year. That was the safe zone for Warren County, was to look at the first quarter and what we might, what the revenue loss might be. I believe our figures are very good based on those projections, but we did not base it on the entire year of almost $1 million. We did not do that. For point of record right now, as of this morning, for the 2 months, December and January, we're at about $140,000 is the loss of revenue. We have 1 month to go. I'm expecting that it'll probably fall in that $60,000 range. Typically, February is that kind of month, whether it's the way closings are done or whatever. But anyway, we do have 1 month to go, and I believe the projected revenue loss will be on target for what we budgeted for the first quarter, but not for the first full year.
Any questions for Pam? Thank you, Pam. Any other discussion? Mr. Loeb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well made. Maybe not relevant to this particular discussion. This gentleman's comments were very clear and organized, and I've never seen you at a meeting. I would like to see you here more often. I think you need to get more involved in Glens Falls and the county. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Leggett.
Thank you. Maybe to clarify one of the first points that someone brought up about the use of the tax. This was instituted at one point in time, and I'm sure there was an original reason for that. Do we have that reason available?
In terms of its original adoption?
Yes.
I've been here a while, but I haven't been here that long. I don't know. I'll turn to the county administrator. I'm sure there must be some kind of something in the resolution that originally adopted this.
I believe at the time there was a debate on whether the board wanted to do this or a different option. I don't recall what that option was. I know the county clerk could probably speak to that. I believe there's $800,000 revenue in this budget. Even, to accept the argument that it falls into the general fund, if you don't get that $800,000, or that's property tax, translates into property tax. We have expenses that are mandated that we have to cover, expenses that are resulting from collective bargaining agreements that we have to honor. We only have so much room in the budget to cut. Our budget officer made a lot of cuts this year, and that's the point I would make, that even if it does just fall into general revenue for general purposes, the alternative is property tax.
I think the answer is that it falls into a revenue discussion. If not this revenue, then what revenue? And then you immediately have to move to property tax or perhaps increasing sales tax. You have to move to other subjects on the revenue side. And of course, you can also have to deal with cutting expense as well. There's a lot of expense to cut out of a pretty tight budget. I almost didn't recognize you, by the way.
And Huck stays near.
I thought it was his younger brother.
Peter McDevitt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I pulled up the counties that, what the sales taxes are in various counties throughout the state of New York the other morning. I counted 3, based on what I was looking at, that have a 7% sales tax in the state of New York. Saratoga County, Washington County, and Warren County. In the order of taxation and priority, I think it's really important that we maintain a 7% sales tax in Warren County. Nobody likes taxes, but if I had a preference in terms of voting, I would vote for the mortgage tax if I had a choice between increasing a sales tax or mortgage tax. The 7% creates an incentive for people in Albany County, for people in Essex County, Clinton County, to shop at these malls here, pay a 7% as opposed to an 8 in Albany County. So it's life, you know. It's a lot of things in life, unfortunately, are not voluntary. Okay, federal income tax. I don't think that's voluntary. New York State income tax. I don't think that's voluntary. So, should it be voluntary? I think you can make that hypothetical argument, but probably in reality, it probably doesn't work. So, thank you for, your thoughts. I appreciate them. But somebody's got to pay the bills.
Mr. Loeb, I'll be right back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on what Supervisor McDevitt said, about 4 years ago or so, there was extensive and passionate discussion about whether we should increase the sales tax. Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties are contiguous, and that's probably not by coincidence. I suspect that if we had increased our sales tax, Warren and Washington counties would have done that also. So I'm going to accept the fact that it's because of our leadership, the leadership of this board, that the sales tax has remained at 7% for the 3 counties. Thank you.
Ms. Bramer?
Thank you. I was going to say about the choice issue. The mortgage tax is only when you're getting a mortgage, so that in most people's lives doesn't happen too often. So, you have a choice to get a loan or not get a loan. I mean, anyway, that's where I'm thinking I stand. But also, I want to get back to Mr. Moore's point about if we accept the argument that it's going into the general fund. It is going into the general fund, correct?
It is. The general fund does offset costs in the county clerk's office, costs in the sheriff's department.
But it's not as though it's being set aside for any particular use by the board. Like, we're collecting this mortgage tax so that we can do X, Y, Z. It's going to the mortgage tax, it's going to the general fund to pay our bills and do general, yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
And I do want to thank Mr. Dunn for coming and for his comments. Thank you.
My
spurred a lot of good discussion.
Apologies. My question was more to when this was debated, when it was enacted, was there any discussion about why we needed the extra revenue? Okay. But it does go into the general fund.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution number 22 is included in your folders. This resolution was posted to the county website and emailed to all members of the Board of Supervisors yesterday. A motion is needed to bring proposed resolution number 22 to the floor.
Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Thomas on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're ready to vote? I'll have the clerk read the roll.
Ready? Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Chairman Conoway?
Yes. I'll now extend the privilege of the floor once again to the audience to address the board regarding any subject. There being no one, announcements, other than it's very cold out. Ms. Bramer?
I told you, I promised you I would remind you again, this weekend is the pond hockey tournament at Crandall Park in Glens Falls. So come out and watch. Sounds like they've got a heated area in the pavilion, and there'll be vendors and some adult beverages, so it should be really fun to go out and watch.
Mr. Dickinson?
World famous Lake Shores Winter Carnival, 56 years. Starts Saturday. Be a lot of drinking, carousing, races, drag races. So if you're bored, get an enzyme, come on up.
Penn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cornell Cooperative Extension, as well as the Tri-County United Way, have begun doing their voluntary income tax assistance program. They've disseminated a list of outreach locations throughout Warren County. They'll be doing that during the balance of today, February, and into March. And if you have any questions, check on the Cooperative Extension website. A household just needs to earn under $55,000 in order to be eligible for that free tax assistance service. The volunteers are trained by IRS programs. It's a wonderful way for families to save a lot of money.
Very good. Mr. Merlino?
Yep, and Saturday, Lake Luzerne's holding its third annual snowmobile race on our lake. It's very interesting the way they run it. It's not by speed, it's by time.
What time is that, Gene?
Well, entry starts at 8, race starts at 9.
9.
And it takes until about 2 o'clock.
9 to 2.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Chair, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Simpson, Ms. Bramer on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for everyone, and thank you for coming.